Hello and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week's edition of the program, we'll be focusing on the organized private sector and their expectations towards political parties in terms of the economy as the country moves closer to the 2023 elections to be held in February. We will be right back.
It's more than 3 months that Konwa and Namda were registered by the Labour and Employment Ministry as breakaways from ASU. In line with the Trade Union Act, the registration has now been gazetted, hence the presentation of certificates. The government implores the new unions to make the difference and resist the temptation of industrial actions that cripple activities in the nation's universities.
We don't want you to go and start fighting with other unions in the university system. We preach unity and solidarity for all.
Then comes the formal presentation of the certificates. The new bodies are appreciative of the government gesture and promised an end to strikes across the universities. It's an opportunity to also present a number of demands, including the payment of withheld 8-month salaries arising from the recent ASU strike. They appeal to the minister to act in accordance with provisions of Section 43, subsection 2 of the Trade Dispute Act.
Ever since Konwa was registered, many Nigerian university academics were liberated from the bondage of ASU. One important implication about the registration of additional academic unions by the Honorable Minister is that there may never be a total shutdown of our universities.
You cannot continuously lock out medical students for 8 months and expect to get good doctors. I can assure Nigerians the quality of medical doctors that will be produced henceforth will be something everybody will be proud of.
The minister promises to intervene and speaks of an intended training for labor unions to drive the system away from intermittent strikes.
Send names of Konwa members, university by university, authenticated by the vice chancellors, who are your employers, and we shall then do our own bit.
The unions also sought government intervention in the remittances of their members' check-up deals to enable them kick off on a good footing.
Joint health sector unions in Yariman Akura Specialist Hospital Gusau staged a peaceful protest over non-payment of salaries and deduction. The health union says some of its members have not been receiving salaries for the past 3 months, while others receive half. This is coming amidst issues around the implementation the 30,000 naira minimum wage the Zamfara state government promised to implement beginning from November last year. The state government had in October last year assured workers of full implementation of the 30,000 naira. At a peaceful protest to express their displeasure, the health workers issued an ultimatum to the state government to settle the issue or shut down the hospital. The union appealed to authorities concerned to act fast on their demands within the 24 hours ultimatum earlier issued, or the union will shut down the hospital after 7 days.
We are brainwashed that in November we will expect to have what we call minimum wage. And that minimum we expect to have salary increasement. So as the November ends, when our salary comes, we realize that it was even cut off. As I'm talking now, most of our staff you see here, they did not collect their November and the September salary. We still have those that collect half of November and half of December. We also have those that collected only December and they did not collect that of November. We gave ultimatum of 24 hours for this. But after this, we will give an ultimatum of 1 week. If nothing happens, we will close the hospital completely.
We have created an agenda that we'll use to engage them, particularly post-election, but they have it now. We are looking forward to them having a buy-in on what the needs of the business is. It's not all politics. I mean, the economy is not in a good shape, so anybody who is inheriting power now must be set as to what needs to be done to allow the real sector to grow. That's actually the focus. We do not want a situation where there's no document that we are going to use to engage them when eventually they come. So we are looking at the economic theme, already thinking about how we are thinking for us to be on the same page, so that we are just trying to help the process for the incoming government to hit the ground running.
Every meeting that we have, whatever you see us present is the voice of a larger percentage of us. So it's not a case of some guys sit together and maybe the management, no. It's the voice of every member of the organized private sector that we have put together as an advocacy document to help the incoming government to be able to settle in and begin to do things properly. So we are forming a pressure group in court, and we're going to make sure that indeed we apply that pressure when the time comes to do that. Much more than that is what we have decided to do after the election. This will form part of the documents for engagement. So we are ready, we are prepared, and we're going to use it just after the election.
On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. He speaks on the several challenges that the employers of labor are faced with and possible solutions towards ensuring that Nigeria has a robust economy. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
A lot has been happening in the organized private sector, which we know, of course, will benefit the working people and employers of labor, and also government if they decide to listen. Top of it most is the organization having a roundtable discussion with political parties on how the economy can move forward. Looking at the rate of inflation that the country is faced with at the moment, what's important is it for organized private sector to have meetings with political parties at this time?
Well, I think we can't be tired of meetings, as it were, since they provide the opportunity to engage critically with those principals or those you think are positioned or going to be positioned to drive the economy as it were in the next few months. So the engagement was basically the OPS engagement driven by NECA, as it were, with support of some critical stakeholders also at the Center for International Private Enterprise. And the idea basically is for us to share the perspective of the OPS, the priority areas of the economy for the OPS, areas where we think if we pull those areas on the trajectory of growth, then they have the potential to drag every other sector or a larger number of our sectors also along with them in the trajectory of growth. So the OPS came up with a priority document, and we shared with the press, we shared with partners, and hopefully that document becomes our agenda document with the next government. As well, these are the priority areas that we think if we focus on, it will not only help the organized private sector to grow, it will also help the nation to come out of the many quagmires that we find ourselves currently.
Right now, as we speak, there's this immediate challenge of fuel scarcity that Nigerians are faced with. What are your recommendations at the organized private sector level? For you to do business, you need electricity supply, and when it's not 24/7, it means you're going to be using diesel or you're going to be using fuel. And if it's not easily accessible, what has been your members' comment as regards this? What are the challenges they're faced with, or are they okay with the way things are going?
You know, we'll say, confidently say, there has been a conspiracy of silence, which is worrisome. You know, we are supposed to be paying humongous amount of money on subsidy, and what subsidy should have done, or what the payment should have done, is to make or guarantee the availability of the product, year in, year out. Now you are paying subsidy for a product, and what you are trying to avoid, you are still faced with the same illness. So it becomes worrisome, becomes a major source of concern, that why exactly are we paying subsidy? As the government removes subsidies silently, and we have this issue of queues everywhere, or what exactly is happening? Our position has been, the whole process has been marred in secrecy, and this also has emphasized that position. That, look, we can't be paying subsidy and then we are still having the fuel scarcity. The landing cost of petrol, altogether, if you move subsidies, some have said between 250 to 300 or 410 naira. Now we have currently people paying, Nigerians paying over 165 naira for fuel. I bought fuel for about 250 naira over the weekend. So the
I bought for 230.
230. In the hinterland, some other areas in Nigeria, they are paying about 400, about 500 for petrol. So what exactly are we talking about subsidy? Do we have subsidy? And that brings us to the conversation about whether we should remove the first subsidy or not. Why we didn't remove it, we have Nigerians paying the actual cost of it. And now if we had removed it, we would have still been in this same point. So the counsel for us is this, and to all stakeholders, that it's all about the analogy of either the egg or the chicken. Which comes first? Is it the egg or the chicken that comes first? In whatever context, one must come first. And if the chicken is to come first, then it has to go through the process of the egg process, basically. It has the mother hen have to gestate on it. All those processes are not easy. They are sacrificial in their own, because the mother hen will not have to, the time it is supposed to use to gallivant around the compound, you have to spend that time sitting on the egg. It's painful. So whether we remove subsidy or not, we are all paying one way or the other. The sacrifice we should have made that we didn't make in time past, we are all paying for it, either through the queue that we currently have, either through the reducing purchasing power of Nigerians, either through businesses that are suffering from these same issues. So I think it's high time we all come together and agree, and with government, compel government to give us a definitive roadmap on how exactly this is going to go. The current government have about 4 months, 4.5 months to live. There's no reason why we can't get the refineries working in 4 months if we are serious. There's no reason why we can't deal with the corruption and bold-faced stealing that many have said happened within the context of this subsidy regime. There's no reason why we can't deal with those within the next 5.5 months. And complementing the local production with the Dangote refineries, then we realize we have sufficient amount or near sufficient amount of liters of fuel that we can maximize locally, and that will also help us to solve other problems that we have. If you stop the issue of fuel subsidy, you probably will have stopped your loss within the context of importing, because we have the crude oil, we import, so the gains we will have made from the increased cost of crude oil in the international market, we are not making it. So it's as some will say, it's double jeopardy, and we seems, it's worrisome that we seems to be comfortable with it, which is something you can hardly fathom.
So how do you rate quality in terms of services that will be rendered, especially when it comes to products, goods, and services? Don't you think that somehow would be feeling that impact in that regard also too?
It's fuel for us in this part of the world is like oxygen. You know, before you move around town, your cars will have to be fueled because of the challenge in the power sector. The SMEs, MSMEs will have to use fuel. The vulcanizer on the road will have to use fuel to power its engine. The the grinding machine, the woman that grinds pepper will probably need fuel also to power its machine. So the more we continue in this part, everybody will one way or the other pass the cost, the additional cost, the marginal cost, as economics will call it, pass the cost to the consumer. So the consumer that we think we are protecting, we are actually exposing the consumer to so many vagaries of price fluctuation. So you still come back to the beginning, let's do the rightful thing. Let's frontally face the issue of fuel subsidy. People are already paying for the actual price of petrol, as it were. So why not let's deal with the issue frontally? Let's feel the pain, and find a way to mitigate the pain for ourselves. We think seriously that is the direction. First, within the next 6 months, thank God, in the budget, the Appropriation Act, the subsidy is supposed to go by June, as proposed by government. So we have this government will leave by May 29th. So the new government will have 1 month of buffer to 1 month of transition to agree to disagree on the modalities. But the time to do it is to start the process. Set up a definitive process is now, so that we all know there's a roadmap between now and the middle of February.
And maybe investors would be ready to invest if they can.
Exactly. Between now and the middle of February, the Port Harcourt refinery will come on stream. Between now and middle of March, another refinery will come on stream. Between now and this period, something else will happen. By 29th of May, we have 3 refineries working. We have this number of liters of fuel, or this number of crude that those refineries can use. Then we have so millions of liters being supplied by end of so month. So it's a roadmap that we can hold everybody to. But somebody coming to say the refineries in Port Harcourt will start working in January or February, those are vague conjectures that we've experienced before, and I will not take this country will not take us further.
Still talking about the agenda by the organized private sector for political parties ahead of the 2023 election. Nigeria's rising debt profile has been something that's been very worrisome as we hit the 41 trillion naira mark. What are your suggestions? Can we still keep borrowing at the state level to pay salaries? What modalities do you think needs to be in place to ensure that we have working people used optimally in terms of production, and also employers of labor also probably having a robust economy to also fuel the country?
There was a conversation that I had, and somebody asked when he heard about the quantum of our debt, and he asked, to build a new country, how much exactly will it cost?
From scratch.
Who need from scratch? Who need 40 trillion? Who need 77 trillion? Who need 50 trillion naira to build a new country? And then you start asking yourself, we've borrowed so much, and really on ground, you ask yourself, what are the signs or the evidences that we borrowed that much? Those are different stories as well. But the truth remains that we can't continue to borrow. Even the debt to GDP ratio in the current budget is about 5.something%, which is more than the 3% that is allowed in the Fiscal Responsibility Act of the same government. So borrowing can be a good thing. It can be a good thing sometimes when the cost of borrowing to invest is cheaper than using your own funds. And at that point, you must have demonstrated a high level of responsibility. And now, if that is not the case, then you borrow to fund infrastructure and the rest, which is fine. But in a situation where we have challenges in so many fronts. Challenges of accountability, challenges of even responsibility. Then you start asking yourself, what is the necessity of we borrowing? You know, the Minister of Finance said we don't have challenges with borrowing, with debt, that the challenge we have is revenue. Come on, if you don't have revenue problem, you probably will run to borrow. So it's like the same context of the egg and the chicken. If I don't have revenue problem, I basically would not borrow. So what we have advocated, or what we are advocating, is this. We have big challenge of oil theft. Now, I'm just trying to break this down so that an average Nigerian can understand the dynamics of it without bringing the big grammar, you know. Now, I have crude oil. I have people, not spirits, stealing the crude oil. So my ability to sell 1.8 million barrel that has been allocated to me by OPEC is compromised because some people are stealing it. Before you steal, you don't take 4-liter gallons and go and steal. You probably will need a big barge, a big ship, as they call it, to siphon the oil. So those people stealing it, they are visible, they can be tracked. You can trace the movement of the oil in the international waters. So we don't have any reason to keep complaining about oil theft. We have many countries in OPEC. How exactly have they monitored, or how are they monitoring their pipelines? It is not rocket science. How are they monitoring their pipelines? If there is no high-level conspiracy in all this, we can implement, or we can borrow the same process, how they monitor their pipelines, to monitor us. If you close the gap of oil theft and you are producing, let's say, 1.7 million barrels per day, you are selling, you have shot up your revenue base. You have shot up your revenue base. As you shot up revenue base, you have more dollars within the context of the economy. Then the challenges you have with Forex will also be solved, because significantly you have more dollars. And as you have more dollars, you also, the pressure on the Naira reduces, because the game of value of the Naira is all about demand and supply. If much Naira is pursuing few dollars, naturally the value of the dollars will go up. Then if you have less Naira pursuing a huge quantum of dollars that you have, it will naturally bring the value of the Naira down to the value that everybody is anticipating. So dealing with the issue of oil theft will have resolved one or two of the other fundamental issues that we have in the country. For us, we think seriously that it is not rocket science. We just need government to demonstrate the political will to deal with these issues. I've tried to just bring those issues down to the basics, so that we don't run into the quagmire of the technicalities behind it. But basically, that is how it is. Close the gap of your leakage, you have more to sell. As you have more to sell, you have more dollars to play with. Close the gap of your subsidy, get your refineries working, then you won't have to import. Then I won't have to spend, look, it's not 3 million, we're talking about 3-4 trillion on subsidy to fund consumption.
Wrapping up with agenda. What will be your recommendations as regards tax policy, owing to the fact that we know that it's an integral part of which the economy is being formed? What are your expectations as regards how we should be taxed as individuals, as workers, and as corporate entities?
Thank you. I'll approach it from two perspectives. First, the need for tax reforms. We said currently the organized businesses are paying close to 55 different taxes, levies, and fees everywhere, from federal government to state government to local government. You know, and tax seems the lazy way of raising funds now in this environment. You know, it's expected that those in government will be creative enough and ingenious enough to find innovative way to fund projects. Tax, we are not averse to tax, but we are averse to responsible taxation regime. You know, let's broaden the tax net, let's broaden the scope within the context of the tax net, so we get more people into the tax net, rather than punishing those that are already paying tax. That is one. Two, also within the context of the agenda, is also to speak to whichever government is coming in. You know, it's less of your policies now. It's also about who are those that will be appointed to run those policies. The era of bringing a Yoruba graduate just for conjecture to be the head of the tax authority. Someone that doesn't understand the process, that doesn't understand the dynamics of how it works. Bringing a non-technocrat to run a very technocratic system will create enough problem for us. And progressively you realize you are communicating to someone with power that doesn't understand what you are saying, which compounds the problem. So beyond the issue of fiscal and monetary policy alignment, beyond the issue of deal with security, deal with issue of insecurity, job creation and the rest, the level and the quality of those that will be appointed into leadership roles from the ministry, from agents of government, those are also very critical elements that the next government will also have to look at so that we can all drive this economy out of this quagmire. The agenda is broad, the agenda is comprehensive, and subsequently the OPS will be sharing that agenda with government, this current government, and also the incoming government, so that we are all aligned within the context of what is the definition of growth, or what is the definition or the definition of development that we want for our nation.
Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure anytime.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.